Ooh, shiny. Oh, I nearly dropped it. Welcome to Crimson Guitars. Welcome to the penultimate video in the 90-hour build series. I am 90 hour, 90 week, 900 month. I don't know. Anyway, look, we're very nearly there. Today is not the day where I put all of the fiddly bits on. I'm sorry. Well, permanently at least. But here's a quick sneak peek of what we're going to look like. Just taking a moment to bask in the insanity that is this build. You may be asking how I'm going to fix the exoskeleton to the body. I too am asking the same thing. Anyway, that is for the next video. Where we are now is fret leveling, crowning, polishing, all of that good stuff. And so in this video I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a nut and maybe even fit a little bit of hardware or do some wiring. I'm not entirely sure where the day is going to take me. We start with a Sharpie. This allows me to see the material that we are removing, or more importantly, what's left while the leveling beam or leveling file is going across the fretboard. We manufacture a comprehensive range of luthier's tools at Crimson, and most popular, not straight edge. With this, you can check how straight or how level a neck is without any guesswork whatsoever. Somewhat annoyingly, it's perfectly straight and perfectly square and flat. At this point, if there was any bow or back bow or anything, I would use an Allen key to adjust the truss rod to make it nice and square, but we're already there, so no change is necessary. By gum. Okay, do not look a gift horse in the mouth. Leveling files. I love these things. I use them almost exclusively. We also do leveling beams. These are longer, perfectly straight, etc. And it's much of a muchness, is what you're used to. Now the point of this is to remove an even amount of material across the whole fretboard and thus leave it perfectly straight. Just before I start, actually, use the fret rocker just to find any particularly high frets, and if, as is the case with this one, it hasn't seated quite perfectly, just knocking it gently down has done the job. I probably should have checked this before this point. So we don't have any major issues. And that's it. That easy. From one side to the other, and the frets are level bar a single small point. Come on, get the camera, get the camera, get the camera. All right, so literally that easy. The fret leveling file takes off a little bit more material than the leveling beam. And you can just see where there's a tiny little bit of permanent marker left. And we're going to be removing that with the fall away. So all I did was from one side to the other, and those frets are now done. I'm going to double check it with the fret rocker, of course, because not to do so would be rather silly. Okay, leveling file. This is the leveling file now, people. The entire world needs to call them leveling files, just to make me feel a little bit less silly. Fret rocker. There is actually just a little bit of rock there. You can just hear just on the edge there. So what I'm going to do, so this is the thing with frets, they are pernickety little things and they really like messing around with you. Sometimes if it hasn't been seated properly or glued in, it will go down with the leveling file and then pop back up and leave you with a high fret. So I'm just pushing down to see if there is any noticeable movement on this one. And there isn't, it's just that that's a little bit low. And this could quite happily or quite easily be because as I was going, I was thinking about filming rather than actually doing anything. And maybe my body and the way I was moving went off and just created a low spot on that first fret. Never mind. I'm gonna just double check everything else. And go back with the leveling beam in a minute. After, there we go, there's a little high spot there. There we go, we're pretty much perfect. Except for two little spots. Now, being very careful not, we're obviously using the Crimson Guitars Rockin' Neck Rest TM. The neck isn't supported here. Now, this is a very stable neck. Obviously, it's perfectly straight after all this insanity. But if I put too much pressure on, I could be making the neck bend as I go and thus actually creating issues. So I'm going to be very, very gentle. And she moved, Jim. The guitar is too shiny. It's got no grip. I'm being very gentle and I'm just taking off a little bit of material. I actually think I need some fresh sandpaper on this. Come on then, I need some fresh sandpaper. Let's go downstairs. Doo-doo. Did you know that it's impossible to skip and be in a bad mood at the same time? 16-inch beam, 320 grit. I'm gonna take a couple of them. And what else do I need? Seriously, everything you need, we pretty much do. Radius beams, crowning files, leveling files. My crowning file is, it's got a different handle, but it's the same tool. You'll see me using that later. Everything and anything. But the most important thing right now, hey, there's fretboards down there, is that I need to get back to the 90-hour build. Okay, so this paper is PSA backed, which means it's sticky backed. And, oh no. Which means as long as you've not left it on for too long, you should be able to get your paper off fairly rapidly with minimal bits and pieces like that. Who needs skin on the palm of your hands anyway? Perfect. Magic. And then it's crowned and we're done. And polished. Or not. Okay, so next up, I'm gonna put a couple of layers of masking tape at the 12th fret. Actually, let's go for 3. Remark these frets, and I'm going to create some fall away. And essentially, as you're playing, your string is sort of vibrating around, and if you have the end of the fretboard or the end of the frets having just a little bit more of an angle on them, it gives the string space to do what it needs to do when you're thrumming away. And yeah, that's what we need to do. So, some tape on there. Some tape covering the front half of the leveling beam so that I'm not sanding away the tape there. And then just very gently I'm putting like half a degree on or something. So what we have is around about here a relatively high fret, so using the fret rocker will show that up. But basically a drop off, and the tops of the frets are all nice and flat and dusty, of course. So level fretboard with some fall away. Easy, yes? Yes. Okay, the fretboard is clean. At this stage, I'm going to grab another leveling beam because you need all of them. And instead of 320 grit, I'm going to use 600 or 800. And I'm just going to polish the tops of the frets flat. And then crowning. Okay. That was 800 grit and 1200 grit. The tops of these frets are polished better than most factories would do it already. At this stage, I am going to, again, double check with this leveling file, I think I called it. Guess what time it is? Sharpie time. Yeah, I know. I'm struggling now. All right, and then we have these things, fretboard protectors. And essentially what we're going to do is use a crowning file. Now, honestly, the easiest way to do this actually is to tape that down to the board. Like so. So the board is being protected by this metal. It's better than using just masking tape, even though we've got safe edges on the crowning files. This way is even safer. Now, you will notice that I am not rolling the crowning file at this stage. I am making a flat-topped pyramid, Inca style. We will sacrifice to the gods of tone at the top. Something, something, something. Yes, I really am just reaching now. But anyway, so we want a very thin point, about 0.5 millimeter to 3/4 of a millimeter, maybe, at the top and in the center of the fret. Okay, and that is that's pretty good. It could be sharper. This is going to be rounded over slightly during the finishing process. Now at this stage, we could go on and do the entire fretboard, and this is how we tend to do it. However, what I like to do is is a little bit different. This is 320 grit, and wrapping it around my crowning file, like so. So at this stage, before I move anything else, I'm polishing out the scratches from the file. It is important to keep the crowning file, to keep the paper tight, because at this stage you could quite easily round things over and mess it up. Okay, so that is one way. There is another, and it involves buying another crimson crowning file, because, you know, why not? You will all have seen the masking tape and super glue trick before. So this is not permanent, but it is nice and tight. So just chop the excess off. In order to save just the tips of your fretboard protectors, there's no point in abrading more of it away than you need to. We do so. And then you rinse and repeat 21 to 24 times. I just spent longer on these fret ends than I normally do, and they are going to be fantastic. At this stage, mask the fretboard up. Remember, there are a million ways in which this could be done, and this is the current method. Focus, there's my face. Hello, how you doing? Okay, that's pretty cool, isn't it? I remember the first time I saw somebody doing that folding over trick, and it saves some time. Realistically, I can't talk anymore. Realistically, you don't have to actually mask off the entire fretboard at this stage. We're talking about buffing, unless it's a maple fretboard unfinished. You can sand through the frets up to, say, 1200 grit, and then mask it off before you go and buff. But because I've got the oil finish on and I don't want to damage it much, I'm doing that. In the school downstairs, we tend to go through the whole process, sand the frets using the fretboard protector, etc., and then clean up the fretboard prior to buffing. But horses for courses and all that jazz. 400 grit paper, wrapped around your fingers. That's how I've done it up to this point. Another option is to grab a fret polishing rubber, which is rubbery, wrap it around there. And what this does is it bumps over the frets and brings everything homogeneously to the same level. Fret rubber. You can go through with the fine, super fine fret polishing rubbers, etc., and get a very, very good polish. It just takes time and elbow grease. And I've spent rather a long time building this guitar. Okay, there are two swifter, faster ways of getting a very, very nice polished fret once you're at this stage. And that is essentially a polishing compound of some sort. This is actually from a strop for sharpening tools. But it's a nice fine polishing compound, and either a bench grinder with a polishing mop on it, which is fast and scary and very, very quick, or a multi-tool of some sort with a felt doohickey in the end. You can either use the big round ones, or this is a more solid felt thing. And this way, you're polishing each individual fret, you've got the tool, and you end up with lovely polished frets. Why am I talking over this? I could just turn it off. And you end up with lovely polished frets. There we go. Relatively quick and straightforward. It's always so difficult filming shiny things. Only a few more to go. At this stage, the guitar is nearly done, but this is where you really have to pay attention and do things precisely. In the finishing process, some of the fantastic oil on the, there's a spot. It's a little bit of damage to the oil on the fretboard, which is a reason why this probably isn't the best technique ever. I'm going to make the nut, I'm going to make the truss rod cover, but while I'm doing that, the fretboard's going to have some more oil applied because it needs moisturizing. Was that weird? That was weird. All right then, that's not actually working according to plan. Somewhat unsurprisingly. If you have a finish, especially an oil finish like that, where most of it is nice high gloss and then some of it has got a matte finish where there's been a repair or a scrape or something, unfortunately you have to take the whole finish back down to a uniform finish. In this case, I've also just polished the frets. I do not want to mess with the frets, so an old silversmith's trick. Piece of stick with some abrasive. And because the sides don't have abrasive on them, nothing happens to our frets. I'm doing this dry at this stage, and then I'm going to go back in and polish the fretboard with guitar finishing oil and the abrasive. Now I need a narrower one to go in between the higher frets. Easy enough to make. So, now that I have a lovely, nice, uniform base on which to start, now I'm going to go back with the same sticks, and I'm going to buff more finishing oil into the fretboard. and it shouldn't take long. It shouldn't take long to get to the same luster as we had before. And here we are. I'm still going to put a few coats on here, but that's really rather attractive now, isn't it? Oh my gosh, I forgot a 12th thread inlay. Time to tidy up. On to the nut. I'm going to use a bone nut, and the thing is with this guitar, I'm going to have to shape the bottom of the nut. I kept on wanting to, my brain was saying sole of the nut, the sole of the nut. That's planes, not nuts. That's going to have to be at an angle because the headstock break angle starts at the nut line in this particular case. I just did it that way this time. Sometimes you push the fretboard back, etc. Due to the width and the limitations that we had with this particular neck blank, due to the insanities of that crazy curve, this is how we've ended up. But I'm talking too much. Somebody should tell me I talk too much. Nut blank. So obviously we've got something going on there. So I'm going to this is going to be a little bit of a humble brag kind of thing. This doesn't happen very often. Absolutely perfect, straight off the bat. I can't focus there, so there we go. Yeah, I was expecting to have to come back and do a few more passes, but it's exactly the right angle and done. Onwards. Here's a trick for you. Pencil. Plain. Half pencil. And the pencil sits on the top of the frets. And you have a line below which your nut slots at least, can't go. Then flip the pencil over and that is a little bit bigger, really, than we want the final nut to be. But it gives me something to work to. Nope, off to a bigger vice. So the outer strings are about 3 millimeters away from the edge of the fretboard. And then we use the crimson string spacing rule to work out where we are. I start the cuts with a razor saw. Again, this is one of ours. And then double check the positioning. Now, just before I do any cutting, back on the guitar, back up with our half pencil, and just remark that line, make sure it's perfect. Now, I am not going full depth with these. This is just to give the strings somewhere to sit while I play. The final setup. You'll see a little bit more fun. I am very, very, very happy with this so far. There was a thought that potentially I could scallop in between each of the strings. I've done that on many nuts a long time ago, but and it would fit with the exoskeletons, but I don't really think the guitar itself was supposed to be a very well-made, custom, lovely, pristine, normal guitar that's got something else eating it. If I made the nut in the same style as the organism, it would break that concept, as it were. So, yeah, here we go. I do, however, need to do a little bit more shaping and make things a little bit more comfortable, because the corners I'm trying to draw while going through those corners there and there, that all needs to be comfy. It needs to be comfy and not hurt your hand as you play. So back to the leveling beam of awesome flatness. So flatten the top off, and then I'm just going to round the corners. Still very, very high. I can actually afford to take a fair old chunk of material off the top of this. And then onto various grits of sandpaper. Just rounding the edges over like this. Everything else has been done on a flat beam and is nice and flat. And at this stage, I'm going to go over the whole thing. It's fine enough, it's not going to change any dimensions, really. Now I could take this and polish it even more. Bone polishes rather well, actually, on a buffing wheel. But I don't think I need to do that. I'm just going to put a tiny drop of super glue in. It's easy to knock that off if required. I need to make a truss rod cover. Quilted Sapele, anyone? This piece comes from the original neck that we started making, and the fretboard comes from the original neck, and they come from the same place. So this bit of flaming here is that bit of flaming there. We can, not that anyone will ever notice, but we can continue this along. And because we can, we will. That's a half pencil. Okay. All right. It has occurred to me, and that needs to be in place. Do I bother? Well, I have to bother. I have to have a truss rod, because any guitar would have had a truss rod prior to alien infestation. So we sort of have to go at that angle. I'm going to cut myself a blank. Weird. Ah, weirder.
I could not be more happy. Sorry, making a bit dizzy there. There you go. I am going to put a few more coats of oil on there just to make it match a little bit better to the sheen on the fretboard. Nut is in. Exoskeleton is in place, if not on. Well, coming up next, the final video of the build. The 90-hour build is almost complete. This isn't the time to get emotional, is it? Click like, subscribe. Please consider supporting us on Patreon. Follow our Instagram for stories and giveaways and things and stuff and nonsense. Because we all need more stuff and nonsense, don't we? See you soon.